Hi everybody, it's great to be back here in Itamar this Friday, and we're going to get right down to our lesson for this week as we approach Tisha B'Av, which is going to be on Shabbat, which is Shabbat Chazon, and this year we're going to fast on Sunday because of that. It is very, very, I think, important to relate to the destruction of our two temples and understand what brought about the terrible, terrible tragedy. What gave the power to these evil kings, Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed our first temple, and our second temple, Titus, the Romans. How were they successful in destroying the Batei Mikdash? These were evil individuals. Why did God allow them to do this? And we know Jeremiah the prophet in chapter 12 says, Madua derech reshaim tzeleha. Why are the evil successful? And he was of course referring to Nebuchadnezzar, an evil king that he destroyed the temple. And the question goes on, how do we see the Nazis, the terrible tragedy of there's no word to describe, the Holocaust, how were they successful in killing 6 million Jews and others as well? And the examples go on. We see success, but eventually we know that God, of course, will pay back. And they will fall, these evils, just like those evil kings fell. But what allows them to have success, even for a certain period of time? And the answer is, of course, they must have some kind of merit. And this concept we learn out in this week's portion. I want to bring it down in a verse. If we look in Deuteronomy, I have it right in front of me over here, we're beginning a new book, and it says like this, Vayomer Hashem Elai al tiraoto. Moshe Rabbeinu talks about the confrontation of Og Melech HaBashan, this evil king. We know he was a giant. He had a huge bed made out of barzel and metal, because he was so big a regular wooden bed couldn't handle him. And God tells to Moshe Rabbeinu, don't fear this evil king, this huge giant, don't be afraid. But the question that is raised is that his brother Sichon Melech HaEmori, Sichon, the other giant, was just as big as his brother Og. He's a big, tough guy as well. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't fear Sichon. But why did he fear Og? That God says right here, Vayom Hashem al tira'oto, do not fear him. So the question, again, that we must ask ourselves in this week's portion is, what made Moshe Rabbeinu fear Og, that God had to calm down and say, don't be afraid? Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu was successful and he killed this evil king. Finally. But in order to understand this, we must see the kind of merit that he had that gave Moshe Rabbeinu a reason to fear him. And our rabbis talk about this. It goes way back. We know that Og Melech HaBashan was a survivor of the flood. He was the only survivor of the flood in the days of Noah, in Noah. Besides, of course, those in the ark. He was holding onto a ladder on the ark itself. And Noah, they were throwing food out of the window to feed this giant. So he goes way back in times of Noah, and we meet him later on. We know that he was circumcised as well, and that gave him merit. Abraham, in Abraham's time, because we know that it says Vayavo Palit, the person who survived. There's a war going on with kings, and he came to tell Abraham that his nephew Lot was taken in captive, and that was Og himself. And this is in the days of Abraham. It goes on later on. We see, of course, now Moshe Rabbeinu's time. So if we take all those years together, we know from Noah to Abraham was like 400 years. For Abraham to Moshe was like 400 and some odd years. And then if you look going back to the flood, so he must have been 1,000 years old, this Og, this evil king. And the question is, why did he have such a merit in living such a long life? And the answer, I think, I just mentioned before, was that he was circumcised. The Zohar Kadosh says that because Og did a circumcision, Abraham, from the house of Abraham, those who were close to Abraham, that gave him the merit. Number one. Number two, the fact that he told Abraham, he revealed to him that Lot was captured. Abraham went out and he did a huge war, and he captured, he freed his nephew, and all the amazing miracles that took place with this war. It made a very big Kiddush Hashem, a very big sanctified God's name, by having the entire world get together and say, wow, they all put the crown on Abraham and said, he's the king over all of us. And that made a very big sanctification of God's name. And this was all put in the credit of this crazy Og Melech HaBashan, this evil king. And we add to another fact, that King David came out of this line from Lot. If Lot was killed and Abraham didn't rescue it, how would Mashiach come, right? We know that he comes out of the line of Ruth HaMoaviah from Lot. So again, indirectly, it's in his merit as well, Mashiach. So, wow, he has a lot of merit for this guy. But the answer is, after he lived 1,000 years, and he was also granted to be king over Bashan. Not everyone gets to be a king, right? So it means God gave him a gift in this world. Wasn't that enough? Wasn't that really enough payback for what he did? And why was Moshe Rabbeinu still afraid? We have to learn out a great concept. How much a person in this world, he does a good deed in this world, God will pay him back. If an evil man like Og was paid back so much, think about those who do good deeds day and night, how much merit eventually God will pay them back what they've done. But anyway, this was the reason we see that when those have good deeds behind themselves, this is a reason that we have to fear. We have to be very careful when evil individuals do good things. Sometimes in this world, it's not so simple because it makes it much harder for us to conquer that evil. It's a very important concept. I want to bring in another example of the same concept brought down in the tractate of Sanhedrin, with the Gemara, again, where Jeremiah asked God the great question, why are the evil successful in this world? Why is King Nebuchadnezzar so successful? And the Gemara has a beautiful story about a person who's saying, he's telling everyone, I can outrun a horse in a river. In a riverbed, I can outrun him in distance, and of course we know running through a river, think about a man running against a horse in a riverbed, the chances he can outrun a horse are just so grim, right? He can't do something like that. There are virtually zero chances. And then what happens is a regular runner, a simple runner, an individual, human being, a runner says, let's have a race. And he races against an individual, and after running a certain distance, he starts going, He can't even outrun a regular run. He's talking about outrunning a soos. But this was what God answered. It's a mashal, a parable. What God answered Jeremiah. You're afraid. You're wondering what's going to be with this Nebuchadnezzar. You know that he ran a little bit over here, but think about the horses. The horses are Abraham, Isaac, the forefathers. Don't worry about them. They can outrun anybody. He's trying to say that the merit that's in store for our forefathers, you can't fathom the merit. And then the Gemara goes on to tell the story of how the fact that Nebuchadnezzar, this evil king that destroyed our first temple, he had the merit. What was his merit? That he traveled 4 steps to honor God, and then he was stopped by the angel Gabriel. What are these 4 steps that he ran to honor God? And the Gemara talks about the story. When this king Nebuchadnezzar, what happened was, there was another evil king, again of Babylon before him. He at this point was only the sofer. He was the secretary of the king. And I'm going to read part of the story in the Talmud. If I have it in front of me, I think I did bring it down. And this is the story. And where do I begin over here? Here we go. Well, I'll try to tell parts of it. That Chizkiyahu, this time was a time when King Chizkiyahu HaMelech, as you know, he was King Hezekiah, he was ill, and then God healed him. And we know the miracle that took place, that God turned the clock around, that he brought the clock down and gave more daylight hours. Whatever it was, when this evil king named Ben Baladan, when he heard about what happened to King Hezekiah, he wanted to greet him with a letter and saying, wow, this miracle happened to you. He deserves a letter, whatever it was. So he told his, at that point, Nebuchadnezzar was the secretary, he was out, he told someone else to write this letter, write a letter, of course, to King Hezekiah to honor him after what happened to him. And in the letter it says like this, and I want to read part of this. It says, Ketvule, write to him, Shlama lemalka Chizkiyahu. This is what the actual secretary wrote. You know, peace to the king of Hezekiah. Shalom lekalted Yerushalayim. Peace to the city of Jerusalem. And shalom le'elah Rabbah. And peace to the great God of the universe. And this is what, again, the secretary of Baladan, this is what he wrote. Nebuchadnezzar, who was real secretary, he came back. And he saw this letter, and he freaked out. He said, wait a second, the letter, who wrote this letter? He was upset about it. He goes, the order, that letter was written wasn't the proper order. What did he write, the order? He first said, peace to the king Chizkiyahu, peace to the city of Jerusalem, and then peace to God. He goes, it should be the opposite. First say peace to God, and then peace to the city of Jerusalem, and then peace to the king. He should reverse the order. And so Baladan says, you know something? If you want to do it, you go run, you go take care of it. Stop the letter. He started running out. He goes, you stop him and change the letter, rewrite it. Whatever it was, he started running in the direction of Nebuchadnezzar to stop this letter going out. And he took 4 4 steps. And as he's walking the 4 steps, the angel grabs him and stops him. And what were these 4 steps? The reward that he went out to honor God. Because he saw that the order of the letter wasn't proper, he was rewarded for these 4 steps. And think about if he would have gone on a few more steps, what God forbid would have happened in later on in history. And for these 4 steps, he merited in destroying the temple of Israel. It's a crazy thing, but we have to understand again, try to understand this concept, this very, very deep concept of what it is when someone deserves merit and God gives merit. God's ways are very exact. And even an evil king like Nebuchadnezzar, yes, he got credit. The Talmud goes on to talk about what each of these 4 steps were, but I'm not going to go now. We don't have time for all those details. But I want to again take this concept that we just spoke about and bring it out, connect it again with the destruction again of the 2 temples. So we saw the first temple here, the merit of Nebuchadnezzar. We saw Moshe Rabbeinu, the 6th portion, was afraid again of the merit of Og. And now if we look again at the 2nd temple, what was the merit again of the Romans? What kind of merit did they have, the Romans? Think about that. They must have had some kind of merit to win out and beat out, destroy the temple, the 2nd temple. And all the evil people today lifting their head up in the world. Because otherwise, they wouldn't be able to succeed in what they've done. But again, we have to realize there's another thing as well that plays, I want to add this other concept, that plays unfortunately, into the hands of our enemies. And that a lot of times, when we ourselves, as a nation of Israel, behave improperly, and we ourselves are not in line, we are giving power and energy to the evil forces of the world. And a very clear example, of course, is the story that's outlined in the Gemara, in the tractate of Gittin, of Kamso, Bal Kamso, the famous story of how destruction came about. As we know, there was a very, very banquet that was being given. And so the head of the person who made the banquet was named Kamsa, and he had somebody didn't